to clean renewable energy is one that's inclusive in many ways, including clients, workforce, and the root of all that policy. So we have folks delivering programs on the ground, installing solar, training folks up for the solar workforce, and we have a team that has clients from multifamily, community solar, and single-family households where we're doing the direct installation of solar, and we have a policy team that works in the places we are and places that we're not to make sure as policy is being created on a state level, particularly folks who are more likely to be left out of that conversation, their voices and decisions that are impacting them are included in that policy process. We're located in California, Colorado, Washington, D.C., and have a few international programs as well.
Thank you, everyone. I'm Chandra Farley, Just Energy Director at the Partnership for Southern Equity. Partnership for Southern Equity is a racial equity organization based in Atlanta, Georgia. We focus on the belief that racial equity is the vehicle to advance shared prosperity, and we do that work focused on metropolitan Atlanta, the state of Georgia, and the American South. We have 4 focus areas: Just Energy, which is the work I lead, which is energy equity and climate justice; Just Growth, which is our equitable development, anti-displacement, water equity work; and Just Opportunity, which focuses on economic inclusion, equitable access to markets, clean energy economy, which we'll talk about, and Just Health, which focuses on health equity, not just on the individual level, but really the health of our communities, which I think speaks largely to the conversation that we'll be having today. And in focusing on access to markets, access to opportunities, through a racial equity lens under the energy and climate work, the disparities in the workforce, as Mary mentioned, particularly in the solar sector. I haven't read this year's, but the Solar Foundation report that talks about the 168% of growth in the solar market, but only 7%. Single digits still of that workforce being African American or people of color. So we really are focused on the intersections, and as a multi-issue organization, understanding that people who are experiencing poverty or a lack of access to any system due to racial inequities, someone's not sick on Monday and can't afford gas to get to work on Tuesday, can't afford food on Thursday. Those things are happening in compounding pressure all the time, every day.
Thanks. Just want to thank IREC and Laure-Jeanne for having me all the way from California. Thank you. And I'm honored to sit on this all-lady panel. So, workforce goddesses, we have termed ourselves. So my name's Staci Hoell. I work on a California low-income solar program called Solar on Multifamily Affordable Housing, which we will hear out just referred to as SOMA, because that's quite a mouthful. But SOMA launched last July, and we are, it's a 10-year program funded by greenhouse gas auction proceeds, up to $1 billion of funding allocated for installing PV solar systems on multifamily properties throughout California. Properties we're focusing on that serve mostly low-income residents or are located in disadvantaged communities, which more commonly environmental justice communities, as they're known. And what's most exciting about this program is there's a huge focus on the workforce development and on the job training opportunities. And so with every program funded installation, there's 1 to 2 job training opportunities that we offer to residents of the properties, as well as students and trainees who are enrolled in job training programs across the state. And it's really early in the program rollout right now. Projects are really just getting going, so I don't have a lot of data to share on job placement and things like that. But so far, I'll let you know that we have had over 300 project applications come in since last July, and that's going to create about 560 job training opportunities, which kind of equates to about 20 full-time equivalent job years. So really excited to see how this is going to ripple out into the larger workforce development initiative. So thanks for having me.
Thank you, Staci, and everyone, fabulous women. So we're going to kind of dive right into the meat of things. As you can tell from these introductions, we have what we think are the right people at the table to not only examine what we need to get our clean energy workforce together and make sure that we have the people to support all these bold energy goals that all the states, municipalities, and others have, but really, how do we recognize that vision that has been around for some time now about, green jobs, paving a pathway out of poverty and creating advantages for communities beyond the energy piece. So moving beyond the energy to the equity. So this is a bit of a tall order. I think a recurring theme throughout this day has been just all the many innumerable stakeholders we need at the table to make all this stuff work. The regulations, the consumers wanting things. There's a lot of people at the table. This is something I feel is almost even doubly true when it comes to the workforce equation. And certainly when you're talking about the training to job pipelines, I mean, the very word, this is a pipeline. It is a long pipeline. It is about support that goes way beyond education, training, and jobs. So we're going to dive right in, start with the kind of the toughest question. We really want our folks to be modeling for you to take home to your home states and areas. What are the best practices out there? What are we seeing in terms of successful models we can replicate or build on to develop robust training to job pipelines for clean energy? And I'm going to start on this end this time. And, we want all our panelists to weigh in, but this will be more of a conversation. So let's kick off with Staci and see where the discussion takes us.
Sure. So it's no secret that California is leading the way as far as at least residential solar installations are going, and part of that is due to programs and funding sources like SOMA, which are really creating projects and therefore jobs in our communities. We also have the new home solar mandate that just went into effect this year. All new California homes built must be solar ready. And so that's really creating a lot of jobs in our community. Excited to see where that goes. But SOMA was sort of built on the really taking into account the successes and challenges of previous solar programs. There was a previous multifamily program before that called MASH, Multifamily Affordable Solar Homes. And that program did have a job training requirement, but was kind of more focused on quantity of job trainees rather than quality. And so what SOMA has done is, really only there's about 1 to 2 job training opportunities on each project. And these projects are multifamily, so they're pretty large. We're seeing up in the 1,000 kilowatt range for some projects. But 1 to 2 trainees for 40 to 80 hours each, so that's about a week or two of work. And so really focusing on the quality of those trainings. Another thing that SOMA is doing really well is we have local and targeted hiring guidelines for the contractors. And so it's not required right now, but highly encouraged that contractors hire within the county or even more specifically the residents of that property. And then targeted hire, what we mean by that is looking at workers who are facing barriers to employment in the solar industry, women, people of color, people re-entering from the criminal justice system. And so some of the ways we're kind of incentivizing contractors to do this without necessarily requiring it are, program media spotlights, case studies. Another way is that when a property owner wants to enroll in SOMA, there's a bidding process that goes on with contractors can submit bids to get that project. And in their bidding proposal, they have an opportunity to describe what their hiring strategies are going to be. And so I think that kind of, as Bryn alluded to in an earlier panel, that really leveraging the demand of the customers for, diverse workforce is really great. That's where I'll leave it.
So to follow up on that, as a advocacy organization, we're an advocacy and organizing organization. So we do our work through 5 different channels. Leadership development, so community leadership development. So we have a series of community leadership development programs. One's a Just Energy Academy focused on energy equity. One's a Just Transformation Academy that is focused on the equitable development. And then sort of a broad Resident Leaders for Equity, which is in partnership with a priority neighborhood that we do our work with in Atlanta. So when I talk about community leadership development, community organizing, where we focus on hiring organizers from the neighborhoods or from the cities where we have had partnerships or are doing work to support 100% clean energy campaign, or educating member owners around, their rights as a member owner or of an EMC. While all of these strategies with the community engagement, the leadership development, and the community organizing aren't specifically maybe focused on green jobs or the training to jobs pipeline, what we're really focused on is making sure that residents and the residents that we know who have the most to benefit from the clean energy transition, solar opportunities, not just in the job force, but what about entrepreneurship? What about the business development and ownership opportunities? So just even getting people involved in the conversation to understand, here is what this means when you see that your city made a commitment to 100% in the newspaper. Or, hey, did you know that there's this thing called the Public Service Commission, and Georgia, unfortunately, they're elected, and you can go down there, and the address is, so come with us. So I wanted to talk about sort of how we do our work at Partnership for Southern Equity, because that is really the core entry point to making sure that communities have the capacity and really working in partnership to build power with communities so they feel ownership of going out to the city council meeting and asking about maybe the local source hiring provision that we helped advocate for in that 100% clean energy resolution. So just wanted to talk about the entry points for that.
Yeah, I think that's so important, Chandra. We heard a very strong call to action from Senator Bhatia this morning, just how we need to, really, I hesitate to say politicize. Obviously, he's a political figure, so that language comes easily. But we need to arouse the interest and the passion of our consumers. And I think that kind of in the workforce wonkiness world, our consumers are like learners and employers, and then we forget about that larger picture of consumer education and outreach. So thank you for weaving that into this conversation.
Thank you. So at Grid Alternatives, we have the very unique perspective of being a large solar contractor. So we're directly doing that work on the outreach side, gaining our clients, and on the direct delivery side, and having a focus on job training and workforce development. So we get to come into the workforce development job training space with the eye of we know who we need to recruit. We're going through similar experiences to for-profit contractors out there. So there's a lot of lessons learned. We've been able to recruit a lot of our workforce through our own job training programs. So they're benefiting us and also the partner employers that we work with. A critical thing I really like to focus on is, in order to get a pipeline, you've got to attract folks in the first place. So a few of the things that we do that I think really help us attract a pipeline is we have entry points of various sizes, right? A one-day volunteer opportunity. I know not everybody could do that, but it might be a one-day shadowing opportunity. We have, 5-week-long courses. So you're not dedicating your entire life to this new direction. You have a short-term opportunity to get trained up and get some experience in something and figure out if that's your pathway. And we have a fellowship program, a 1-year commitment where you get to work alongside our staff, help deliver services, gain skills, and through that time get to network and explore what the possible opportunities are in the industry. And we also have a spring break program for college students, so they can come and get a taste, not just of solar, but all the intersecting aspects of it. How does it intertwine with environmental justice? How does it intertwine with just our full energy future? What are the technologies out there? So we attract college students with a bunch of interest and get them at that point where they're deciding on their career pathway. And we're also in high schools, delivering classes, sometimes just classes, but sometimes hands-on experiences as well. And I think our presence, period, in communities, right? Those trucks out there, visible solar panels on rooftops, we're able to get questions and inquiries. So through these different mechanisms of engaging folks for shorter and longer term periods, and specifically folks in communities with lower incomes, folks returning out of incarceration. We have a strong focus on attracting women into the technical side of the solar field, and the future workforce, right? We're competing with so many other industries in an economy that's doing generally well right now, and counselors don't necessarily have solar on their mind when they're making recommendations to folks. I wanted to go into prosthetics. Nobody at my school could tell me how to go into prosthetics. I had to do that research ourselves. We don't want young people having to, not getting that spark from a staff member of like, oh, there's this thing, oh, that's what you're interested in, oh, there's this solar field. No, they're gonna go to some engineering field in the fossil fuel industry, or something else. We're new. We gotta get our names out there, So engagement with the people, right, who are influencing the future workforce and making sure they know about us. So engagement with community job training programs, with teachers and counselors on the high school and college level. So for us, those are some of the best practices on building a pipeline, and that pipeline being inclusive. So presence, really think about recruitment, have different lengths of opportunities for folks to engage with your company or your organization. And on the policy end, I do wanna add, right? Folks got to be included when policy and legislation is being pushed. That gets excitement up for when things are finally passed and hitting the ground. I saw some excellent stuff when working in Illinois. Where groups from environmental justice, faith-based groups, et cetera, got together and really influenced that legislation. And I've seen the benefits come back to the community in regards to training and otherwise. I'll stop there, but spread the word. Some folks don't know about us. They gotta know.
I love it. And that dovetails perfectly. And I'm sure our other expert panelists may have other examples of this. But thank you for bringing up the K through 12 equation and the mystique of clean jobs, because that is one of the things we are battling. I will mention a couple tools IREC has employed to help that, not so much in the community organizing end, but something to hand into your hands to do that organizing. IREC produces career maps that are interactive and visually appealing, sometimes with video integrated, that can show, a career counselor, a student, someone in the community working to support millennials who are looking to impact the world they live in, and don't necessarily have a counselor at school that can tell them how to get there. It shows the pathways. We have a solar career map, IREC solar career map, and we also have an HVACR career map, and are underway working on other avenues along those lines. So to the extent you know of any other resources we can get into folks' hands, let's chime in with those. But before we go there, want to afford Mary an opportunity to kind of represent for energy efficiency and some of the work ACEEE is doing in that field.
Thanks. I want to highlight two different program models. One are utility trade ally diversification efforts, and the second is internship programs. On the utility front, in 2018, utilities spent about $8 billion on energy efficiency programs. So utilities really know what services and measures their customers need, and really what skills are needed to deliver those measures to their customers. These trade ally diversification programs really target existing contracting firms and work with them to train them and qualify them in order to deliver efficiency or utilities efficiency programs. To highlight an example, going back to Illinois, ComEd since 2018 has had a diverse energy efficiency service provider incubator program Through this program, they engage minority, women, and veteran-owned contracting firms, and they pair them with their existing efficiency implementing contractors. ComEd hosts a series of workshops for those minority firms, and they enable them to shadow the more experienced firms, really get a sense as to what's involved in working with ComEd on their efficiency programs. In 2020, ComEd is going to be building out that mentorship program, and they have already started using some of those diverse firms to implement their efficiency programs. I think about 14 out of 20 firms are now kind of implementing contractors for ComEd. Ameren, Illinois has a similar program, as does the Tennessee Valley Authority, TVA. The other model I want to highlight is internship programs. Getting to what Erika said, there are a lot of great opportunities to make sure that energy efficiency and clean energy career opportunities are on the radars of young adults and students. One example is NYSERDA. They have a workforce training investment plan that includes a bunch of different funding opportunities, one of which is a clean energy internship program. Through this program, NYSERDA reimburses clean energy and energy efficiency businesses for over 50% of the cost of interns that are working on board. And these interns are usually they're required to be between 18 and 24 years old, either in school, recently graduated, or in other work preparedness programs. Locally, the DC Sustainable Energy Utility also has an externship program. Through this program, they place externs in 5-month positions in building weatherization with electricians, also with solar technicians. So I like that the DCSEU program is cross-cutting and pan technology.
Great. Thank you, Mary, and thank you for calling out NYSERDA. They are definitely doing some good work in this area, as are our colleagues at the Massachusetts Clean Energy Center, including California, Illinois, and all the other states that we love who are doing this work. But I think we're already touching on this in a lot of ways with some of the things we just articulated. But anything else you all want to call out on how tactics specifically for cultivating pipelines that lead to a more diverse and inclusive workforce? I think, we spoke about this last year. The vision IREC has, and I know is shared by many on the stage and in this room, is that the workforce, the clean energy workforce, is more reflectant of what the people we serve and the consumers we want to serve. And last I checked, the America I lived in is awfully diverse. So how do we get there, ladies? Any other comments about specifically the inclusion piece?
I do want to bring up, and I think there are a lot of groups that have started to talk about this. As a racial equity organization, and as equity has become very exciting for people and everyone wants to talk about equity. Racial equity leaves the space to talk about why we need equity. White supremacy, systemic racism, institutional racism, all of these systems that are consciously embedded throughout a pipeline. So when we're talking about trainings to a job pipeline or reaching out to communities and being inclusive, we have to make sure that we remember there are certain sensitivities to communities that have historically been under siege, historically been disinvested in, and intentionally under-resourced, and that if you haven't had that early education or that early exposure, maybe you've never been through a training program before. You've never had to create a resume, or you've never had to have a phone interview. So there are so many of the wraparound, I guess for lack of a better term, services and considerations that are needed when developing and implementing these kinds of programs, and that, not an engineer, no, it doesn't really work this way, but pipeline, so it's not so linear. So we talk a lot about the continuum of engagement, that it is ongoing, it's relationship building, equity and community building, it's about relationships. So just thinking about those things before you even get to a classroom, before the first job. So just wanted to bring that into the conversation.
I'll add a thought. Across the utilities I've looked at with energy efficiency workforce development programs, a lot of them engage community-based organizations, and those community-based organizations help the utilities, and I've also seen them help cities really recruit the unemployed, the underemployed, and otherwise underserved community members into those programs. And those community-based organizations also help identify soft skill training opportunities and appropriate training providers to address those soft skill gaps. I also think it's important that workforce development programs, where possible, offer wages, because that's a really key way for enticing people who might not be able to afford to participate otherwise. And it really keeps trainees engaged throughout the duration of a program. NYSERDA does that, as does the DCSEU.
Yeah, agreed. And if your organization or your partnering organizations do have the capacity to take on the apprenticeship beast, it's a good time to be in that line of business. So there is no reason that you should have someone unpaid learning this trade right now, or any trade really. It's not just in clean energy. So want to tie in a little to the wraparound services piece, and I just want to take moderator's privilege to highlight a pilot program that IREC has done with our partners, NAHB, who their 501c3 running educational programs is the Home Builders Institute. They happen to run the building technology programs for the Job Corps, who many of you may know from your communities. They train in an in-house setting. It's a residential setting, over 3,000 what we call opportunity youth or at-risk youth a year. And not only, the actual direct training, whether it be in building technology, solar, or other, also providing the basic job training. How do you show up on time? What do you wear? How do you interview? How do you interact with colleagues? They buy these folks clothes for the first interview. So IREC quickly realized, when we were looking at this issue in partnership with some of our wonderful folks here, that we didn't have the ability to deliver that pipeline. As you said, and yeah, I don't know the engineering either, but there's chunks, right? There's pieces of the pipeline. We're really satisfied that we understand how to develop really good job-focused training that actually leads to success on the job, but we didn't have the capacity to provide something that a CAP, a community action program, or another, a faith-based or another community-based organization could provide. So what we did is we partnered with the Job Corps, got access to them, their expertise, their students, their job counselors, and not only did we develop training and a certification that we worked with solar employers directly on, as our friends with Grid and others do, to say, okay, we want to get these folks up on the roof. We want them to operate safely, and we want them to install the rooftop attachments in a way that is secure to the weather. We developed the certification, the training, but also developed the outreach to educate these folks and their job counselors on what these jobs had to offer. And as a result, they now have 1,100 certified folks ready to get up on the roof, who not only have solar knowledge, but also will show up on time and have the whole Job Corps network supporting them in starting this career. And similar to Staci, we're still waiting for kind of the numbers to start grinding out, but there's some really interesting anecdotes and stories of actual people who have been their lives are transformed by this. In one case, one of the young men thought that solar was too difficult. And through this outreach and the hand-holding and hello, your friends are doing this too, he has been employed for over a year and has had several raises. So that's one success story. We can weave some more of those in as we go here. But anything else on the diversity and equity piece before we move on to some of the other juicy topics?
Well, kind of connected to what you say, partnership is really key in this work. Outside of renewable energy, right? We have a whole history of organizations who have been working hard to get folks job ready, to help folks transition to different careers, and help recruit new folks into the workforce. So partnership with those organizations just make a lot of sense. We just add another element to what they do and have them do what they've been doing well and what they've learned the lessons on for a long time. And then those partnerships, I feel, when we talk pipeline, if anybody's my LinkedIn friend, I shared this last week for National Week of Women in Construction. And I gave an example of one of our current solar core in Los Angeles, who was a security guard, wanted something with more of a career pipeline, joined the local conservation corps, did 2 jobs, did the conservation corps while still doing security, trained with grid while with the conservation corps, is now into a year fellowship, and I am sure is going to kick butt in this industry and be a huge contributor. But without those linkages, right, the outreach done to find her in the first place, 2 different training programs with different specialties, and the opportunity and support to soar, it wouldn't happen. So it's finding those partners, but also thinking through what are the different connection points after this that folks can go in along the line. It's a real hurt in communities, particularly working with underemployed folks and folks entering the workforce, if you train them up and there's not an opportunity afterwards. So really thinking through those linkages and how you can keep folks with the forward momentum and what part your company or organization can play in that is really important. Otherwise, folks feel like they were just used. This industry or these folks don't really care about me, and that causes disinterest, kind of like when a contractor goes out and does a bad job. And for the people on that block, I don't know about this solar stuff. All right, so same in the workforce development side of things.
Absolutely. Thank you for that. I know that's one of the challenges we perceive on the workforce side is making sure that pipeline goes beyond the education piece, right? So the support services are needed on the front end, but also on the back end to make sure that this is a viable, not just employment, but career opportunity for our subject audiences. So I'm going to take us back a few hours ago. We started talking about really just the intersection of energy efficiency and renewable energy, how we really need to think about energy efficiency first before we have affordable renewable energy and we can get enough of it on the grid to serve everyone. We got to save some energy first, or at least kind of flatten that line a little bit. How can we eliminate the silo effect between energy efficiency and renewable energy workforce considerations and planning? Discuss. I'd love to hear what you have to say on this.
Should efficiency go first? Yes. So first I would say when designing state policies, you should think about efficiency and renewable energy workforce development provisions together when possible. Erika alluded to policy success in Illinois. I think she was talking about the Future Energy Jobs Act. In 2016, this strengthened the state's renewable portfolio standard and their energy efficiency resource standard, and it really prioritized engaging low-income communities on clean energy. It inspired ComEd to offer its diverse energy efficiency service provider incubator program as well. And Ameren, Illinois has theirs separately. So I think when you can think about efficiency and renewables at the state policy level together with regards to workforce development, that'll set you up for success. And then also at a more programmatic level, it's great when you can offer both training for both solar and efficiency career paths together under one umbrella like DCSCU does and like NYSERDA does with their funding opportunities.
Thank you, Mary. Anyone else on that? Erika?
Talk to each other. And that sounds so simple, but my experience, I came from, 5 years in the energy efficiency space in New York, moved down here, got into the solar space, and even with my deep interest in energy efficiency, I have yet to really drive that connection. And I'll say it's being busy with whatever I'm doing and not making the intentional commitment to get that done. So I think it first starts with the commitment factor on various levels and just trying to get an understanding of what's going on in that space. I know that there's plenty of transferable skills, at least on the kind of technical hands-on side. But if you think about our businesses, right, there's always an outreach and sales component. There's always a back office component. You know, whatever we're training folks for, there's applicable things from industry to industry. And I think we have a better workforce if they're educated on both sides of that, and even more, and get that full picture. So I don't have any answers besides make it intentional. But I love the idea of combining the training efforts, at least right with introductions to the other. Within those training opportunities. And again, as we talk about, you know, connections and pipeline, hey, if I have this student or this person I'm recruiting who's interested in this side of things, knowing ahead of time, all right, this is where they can get connected.
Yeah, I'll just add that with SOMA being a state program, it is mostly focused on solar installation, but there is an energy efficiency compliance piece. Admittedly, right now, the workforce development is not really touching on that, but throughout the 10-year program, hope to have these conversations and see how we can do that. So.
Yeah, and I think this is sometimes a lot of us in the workforce and education space are nonprofits, educational institutions, and this siloing, you know, we do it ourselves, but it's also sometimes about funding streams, right? So, you know, this one funds renewables, this one funds energy efficiency, but I think at least I perceive a growing consciousness that the two need to be wedded. There's limited resources, there's limited, you know, that's kind of what this Vision Summit is all about, right? We all need to pull together. But I think that's especially acute in the area of making sure that all the clean energy technologies have a seat at the table, because we can't exist independently and reach these goals. You know, we can continue the way we are, but that's not the goal here. So anything else on that before we move on?
I mean, I'd love in the breakout groups later to just discuss what are the other places in which energy efficiency and renewable energy are kind of intersecting and talking, and because I personally am only in certain spaces, it'd be great to know, you know, where else we can be bringing the conversation and kind of seeing what the awareness level of is and interest is in that connection.
One question for Chandra. I can imagine from a community-based organization's perspective, it's a lot to deal with different companies who are trying to work with you on training programs. Is there an opportunity, you think, for the renewable and efficiency communities to maybe coordinate on their outreach to community-based organizations? Or is that happening already?
Yeah, that's a good question, and I feel like we were having that conversation a little bit in our breakout group, you know, this morning about the siloing, you know, that happens, you know, and then in the regulatory space. So I think this goes to both of our two last questions, you know, using Atlanta, you know, or Georgia as an example. With a lot of the 100%, you know, clean energy commitments, it's efficiency first, because we don't have the residential solar market yet. We just don't have the regulatory structures in place, you know, to create that. So the conversation we were having about, you know, how do we put those things together? It's because as we're training people in efficiency, we do need to be training them also so they are ready to move into these solar jobs, or you know, start a solar company, or, you know, these things. So I did want to make that connection point, and I think that kind of also is probably how I would answer your question, is just that for us, they are coming to us that way, because we've been focused a lot on the conversation around energy burden in Atlanta, and particularly in the South. So the strategies, as we're having conversations about energy burden, you know, efficiency first, you know, is the home, you know, most efficient, you know, the weatherization, the energy efficiency technologies are the things that are just going to happen first. But we know some solar companies and have some friends, you know, that are interested in training programs, and particularly partnering with organizations like ours to make sure that they are doing the best they can to be inclusive and equitable in their outreach. So that may be a situation that's kind of happening organically, just because of our market and regulatory realities, I think, in Atlanta and Georgia. But we, in addition to community leadership development and community organizing, we build coalitions. So we have a Just Energy Circle, and that is the space where we bring together the technical experts, the professional policy advocacy organizations around the table with faith-based groups, student groups, neighborhood associations. So there are so many opportunities for technical organizations, utility folks to dive into immediately in partnership, where we're hungry to have the information that is coming from the other side. So I think just being intentional about what you're trying to do together and how you can do it together.
Great. Thank you, Chandra. Who else needs, so we've talked about a bunch of different stakeholder groups in this conversation. We've talked about the folks that help at the beginning of the pipeline, either with the more traditional or more vulnerable populations we want to attract to the clean energy industry. Obviously the trainers and educators are very visible in that equation. The employers, we touched a little on how we need employer input onto what it is we're training people on, so we make sure they have a job. And if you're in touch with the employer throughout the pipeline, it's not like, surprise, they graduated, they need a job now. Who else needs to be at the table? Is there anyone we did not yet mention? And obviously in clean energy, we want to be conscious, but from not in our industry, policymakers, regulators, who else needs to be at the table? Are we missing anyone?
Well, I actually wanted to deep dive into the employers. So when thinking about employers, we can give them the tools to have a diverse hiring pipeline, but also we need to be thinking about how to support a diverse workforce once they're on. So for example, making sure that the culture of your company supports women on the job site who often experience discrimination or harassment, and folks coming from really diverse backgrounds, veterans working in the solar industry. So just want to give a shout out to that.
Thank you. Hear, hear. So we're going to do go ahead.
Real quick.
Follow up.
All right. I want to give a shout out and think Solar Foundation is represented in the room. When we reach out to local workforce boards that are getting Department of Labor money, it's nice to have material and information that demonstrates that the industry is present. Here's what's going on. Here's the skill sets that folks are looking for. I know not every one of us has time to make glossy pamphlets that show this information. So that's an example of organizations who are gathering the information to help share what's going on. That helps educate not just the workforce boards, but also training organizations who are like, why do you want to partner with us? What is this thing that you're talking about? So that's one layer, and thank you, Staci, in regards to it's one thing to recruit folks, it's another thing to retain, and the culture in organizations is super important. Now I'm forgetting your question. What stakeholders. Okay. So I wanna put out there our experience in solar right now. Like, there was a time where most of our connections in regards to employment were to like the large scale companies. Now we're placing trainees a lot more with small mom and pop shops. It's hard for those smaller companies to take time to figure out partnerships and know who to go to. So I think industry associations, particularly on a local level, so the state-based, the local chapters of those state-based organizations, I think our smaller contractors, at least on the construction side, right, need representatives who can support them in building those community relationships. Because I understand. People are trying to keep their businesses together, and need a little support in that process. So I think industry associations play an important role as well, and also setting the tone for an inclusive workforce as well.
Yeah, that, and they have the access to some of the people we really need at the table, and they're the trusted voice. So here, Mary.
Just want to add one other association, which is the National Urban League, that has national or local chapters. I found that Ameren and TVA work with their local Urban League chapters to recruit training program participants and then identify soft skill training needs and opportunities.
Great. So we are, I feel like we're like literally kicking off. We are near the end of our panelist time. But since we're going to do a quick lightning round. Okay, so we are workforce goddesses. So we can do, the world will do what we say next. What has to be done next to move this workforce training to jobs pipeline forward if you did indeed rule the world as a workforce goddess? Start down.
First, I think that utilities and policymakers really need to figure out the right metrics for measuring the success of their workforce development programs. The utilities programs I've looked at are mostly in their infancy, so it's unclear kind of what specific outcomes they've achieved so far. Some of them have talked about job placement rates for interns. I've seen city disparity studies as an option as a way to measure progress. Or utility tallies of diverse contractor utilization could be another metric. I think we need to dig deeper than just counting the total number of solar or energy efficiency jobs that exist, as reported in the U.S. Energy Employment Report, which is a great resource. But I think that report shows that these industries are growing, but employers still face a lot of hiring difficulty. The one other next step I would suggest is that utilities, policymakers, advocates, and companies really continue to share their success stories. We talk a lot about those total top line clean energy job numbers, but not much about how we can grow them and how we can make them more inclusive.
I definitely second that in regards to sharing success stories. I think that makes a huge impact when folks can hear very specific about specific people and their story and their pathway. I'm in support of all employers engaging more in developing internship and apprenticeship programs. Again, that's those like short-term opportunities to engage and get introduced and work alongside professionals in the field. Great education. Also, you know what? Training takes time and money. So through those type of opportunities, there's great government grant programs or Department of Labor dollars that are spread out across the states that folks can be taken advantage of. And through doing so, right, by getting on the kind of radar of government, that helps increase the knowledge of the presence of the industry and create more opportunities as well.
So our founder and chief equity officer, Nathaniel Smith, says that the greatest enemy of equity is time. And so if I had to sum that up, I would just say more courageous collaboration and more courageous centering and prioritizing of people, the people that we are talking about who stand to benefit the most, the people that we know we are leaving behind, and specificity. What do we mean when we say a green job? Should we even just stop saying green job and just being more specific, particularly as we try to sort of accelerate? If we're going to, okay, let's do it. Let's be courageous in our collaboration. Well, let's also be really specific about what we're trying to achieve in this collaboration. I think solar, it can even be really big when we're talking about, solar jobs or work for clean energy. Those things can be really big and broad, particularly when you're talking to community. So being intentional about being specific and just being courageous collaborators.
Yeah, so I would say, just to wrap up, look at who's working in this industry and who's not. I want to give a shout out to the Solar Foundation's National Solar Jobs Census. They release every year. It was just released in February. And they also have a really great diversity study and strategies for employers to hire a diverse workforce. So really great resources out there. And if nothing else, if you leave with nothing else today, I want to advance, the business case for hiring a diverse workforce. As Laure-Jeanne mentioned earlier, does our workforce reflect the communities we're serving or trying to serve? If you are hiring locally, you're building trust within that community and therefore, opening new doors and new markets. So, yeah.
Thank you for these great insights. This is amazing. And I guess I would just leave us with, we need a lot more of these convenings to make this work. And I think we saw earlier today, we don't necessarily have to have everyone in the room. A lot of us are nonprofits, governmental agencies. Unfortunately, we can't all sit together and have this brain trust every day. I know I, for one, am committed to, keeping the lines of communication open throughout the year in between summits. To that end, we're going to close with a polling question. We want to hear about what workforce issues are important to you that we should cover maybe sooner, but definitely at next year's Vision Summit. And then if we have time for 1 or 2 questions, we'll do that. And then we're going to break out and talk workforce. So what do you think needs a deep dive, guys? And I'm sure we didn't think of everything. So if it's other, I definitely will reach out to you. So please let us know. Shout out to organized labor, higher ed. Some of these we touched on, but definitely deserve a deep dive. Oh, interesting. Okay. Okay, we'll give you another minute. While we're finishing the poll, do we have time for 1 or 2 questions? Okay. Eric?
Hi there, Eric Baina with NASCAS. We work with all the state directors of the Weatherization Assistance Program. So one thing that we're running into is the weatherization workforce is aging out. There's a lot of retirements, and that's contributing to just the overall workforce challenges. One issue is that some of this weatherization work, it takes a very dedicated person to climb up into an attic when it's 90 degrees or crawl into a crawl space. So a conversation that we've been having is how do we brand this work and even rethinking workforce of is your organization doing that is attracting millennial workers, having a gym membership. So I guess my question is, what are some of the more out-of-the-box strategies that we can kind of use to brand these as careers that people want to do, and then also some of those aids in retention that just workforce-wide, regardless of industry, are becoming necessary to keep and retain workers?
So yes, an energy efficiency question. So I started down there. Mary, do you want to start? But I know
I don't have.
It can be an energy efficiency or a broader question.
I really like IREC's solar career map, and I wish there was something like it for energy efficiency as well, because I think that would get to your point about showing the career path that someone might take, starting out doing weatherization work and maybe climbing the ranks to do more managerial work. I have heard when I've seen groups like E for the Future they have a great campaign called Faces of Energy Efficiency, where they interview people who work in the industry, and I think a lot of those interviews, the people in those interviews have talked about feeling like they're making a difference in the lives of their neighbors, making them more comfortable, but also helping the environment. And so those are 2 kind of facets that I think could be part of a rebranding campaign.
And this is cheating because I'm not about to say anything Eric does not know, but I think the work that the feds and others, partners like NASCASP, IREC, BPI, who are also in the room, ACEEE, have done to professionalize the career of energy efficiency and start to outline both the training, education, and certification that comprises that profession. Because as Eric said, yeah, there's a gritty side, but these folks, they're building scientists. That word is not coined for fun. They literally, the knowledge they need to have to keep the occupants of the home not only operating energy efficiently but safely and breathing good air it's at a very high level. So I think we need to continue collectively to support that work and support the professionalization of these occupations. And that goes for solar as well. But I think that there may at this time be a slightly better story to tell in terms of the salary ranges for entry level, but that may be out-of-date information. So I see a hand in the back of the room. Thanks, Liz.
Robinson, Philadelphia Solar Energy Association. In Philly and in Pennsylvania, we're having a struggle between fossil fuel plants that have gone awry, that have to be shut down, leaving their unionized workforce adrift. And we're also facing this struggle with the fracking industry trying to back it down, and the same problem that the unionized workforce, there's no plan for transition of the if you will, the dirty energy worker to a clean energy worker. Are there any good models anywhere in the country that we should be looking at?
I don't mean to dominate, but I think I saw that the Mountain Association for Clean Energy might be in the room. Is someone from MASED here? Okay, they were on the list. They are a nonprofit based in Eastern Kentucky that has a program called the New Energy Internship Program, where they train former coal workers to do solar installations as well as energy efficiency improvements in local homes and businesses. So that's one great example I would point to, and it's MASED.
I might get some of these details wrong. Maybe somebody in the room knows more, but there was a recent grant opportunity that came out that was really attractive. I love what was done here. A group of organizations pushed for the closing of a gas plant, and through their settlement dollars, they dedicated, they were looking for partners to train up that workforce at the plant and other folks in the surrounding community for the solar jobs to come. So it's a situation where they know solar jobs are coming down the pipeline, so that's helpful. But in planning the closing, first of all, there's a few years, right, going into the closing of the place, right? We can't just like, boom, all right, gotta get you a job, right? So planning ahead for the shutting down of facilities, and thinking way ahead in regards to funding that training and providing training for new jobs while folks are still employed in their existing. So I thought that was fun that the folks pushing for the closing of a dirty fuel factory were also thinking about that workforce at the same time.
That's a cool story, and I think this is, Liz, another case where the de-siloing effect could be useful, because a lot of the initial programs like focused on the Appalachian region out in Colorado were okay. So we're going to train them to be solar workers or this kind of worker, and there may or may not have been jobs in those regions in the solar industry for these folks, and you're asking them to uproot their families and la. So but there's literally almost no place in the country where weatherization does not work to play on their motto. So if we can look at it more holistically and offer a suite of opportunities to these people that need to transition, I think that would serve us well. Thank you.
And I think solar has a reputation of being sexier than energy efficiency. So
Unfortunately.
I think we have a role in supporting weatherization and looking more sexy. So we should consider, right, how we talk about it and use the vocabulary and help folks see the weatherization energy efficiency work as part of the work that we're doing, since we're getting more cool points right now. Yeah.
Yeah, no, and I do think there are a lot of stories to tell, and NASCASP and CAP, who are in the room, they do tell these stories about, first of all, the impact that those workers have on the people they interact with. This is not, again, not something you enter into because you want to be a multi-billionaire. Usually you're in it because the science interests you and because you care about the people that you serve. So there's a lot of success stories to tell on the weatherization and energy efficiency side. And that's where we got to go with that. So with that, I think we are going to go to our breakout sessions. We want to hear from you. We're asking you actually a couple of the questions that we did ask of our panelists. So what do you think has to happen next? We have other workforce experts in the room. I couldn't fit all of you up here. I couldn't fit Illinois up here. We've got Bob Hattier and others in the room who have a story to tell from that state. But first, can we have a round of applause for these wonderful women? Thank you so much, ladies.